Welcome to Moral Performance Functional Performance Training System Integration. I'm Tim Morrill, strength and conditioning coach, ultimate player, and owner at Moral Performance. The goal of this module is to teach you how each of the 8 pillars of functional performance training interact together to decrease injury and improve performance. An understanding of each of the 8 and how they interact together is critical to reaching your potential as an ultimate player. If studied and applied properly, MPFPT will lead to a longer career, less injuries, and improved performance. A great example of the success of the implementation of MPFPT is with Boston Brute Squad. In 2011, before I joined the team as the strength coach, we suffered 3 ACL tears. After the implementation of MPFPT curriculum, in 2012 and 2013, I'm pleased to say, we had 0. Guys, we're going to cover a lot today. Do not be overwhelmed. Stick with it, and I'll guide you through step by step. Today on the agenda, we will cover the foundation, the unique demands of Ultimate, the 8 pillars or modules of FPT, putting it all together, and application. Let's get started. In the process of writing my ebook, The Foundation, I reviewed more than 70 well-established strength and conditioning, training books, and research articles. What I found to be the 4 most talked about qualities in the strength and conditioning world were strength, power, speed, and agility. Strength can be thought of as the ability to generate maximal external force. Power is the ability to generate force rapidly. It is written force times velocity. Speed is the ability to move at a high velocity. Agility seems more difficult to define. Plisk 2008 defines agility as an athlete's collective coordinative abilities. Simply stated, we can think of strength as the ability to generate force. We can think of power as the ability to generate force rapidly. We can think of speed as velocity in the sagittal plane, and agility as the ability to control change of direction. In my early years as a strength and conditioning coach, I focused mostly on these 4 qualities. I was working in a collegiate setting, which meant that I had young, healthy athletes. And if I had injuries, I would simply send them to the athletic training department. This meant that I did very little work in asymmetry correction, body maintenance, tissue quality, and breathing. The bulk of the training I used was Olympic lifting based, which worked very well for my athletes, who were mostly football players, swimmers, track and field sprinters, and soccer players. Mind you, these sports are relatively symmetrical, meaning there is not a lot of one-side bias. As I progressed in my career, I began to put more thought into the sport that I'm most passionate about, Ultimate. What I came to realize is that the unique demands and common movements of Ultimate are completely unique. This meant that in order to properly train my Ultimate athletes, I needed to progress and grow in order to properly address the specific needs of Ultimate players. It is not optimal to use training methodologies for other sports to train our unique sport. This realization is what led me to create the MPFPT training system for the Ultimate community. Before we get into the MPFPT training system, let's take a second to look at the unique demands of Ultimate. Ultimate asymmetries stem from pivoting, rotation on backhands, and one shoulder throwing. When we throw forehands, our toe tends to go out to the side, external rotation of the hip. This allows us to expose the torso to the field and make a good throw. The high volume of this toe out creates what we call an external rotation bias, often creating asymmetry in the hips and leading to the toe being permanently turned out to the side. When we throw backhands, we rotate a lot on this side, but in forehands, we don't rotate. So we get a ton of rotation through one side of our spine and none on the other, leading to spinal asymmetries. One shoulder throwing creates a lot of motion on one shoulder, but because we don't throw with this other shoulder, we tend to neglect it and it tends to have less function. Now, ultimate is also a power endurance sport. When we look at a sport like football, ultimate has very similar movements to football. However, in ultimate, players must sprint, cut, and jump until the point is scored. This leads to sometimes very, very long points and demands an endurance quality. Ultimate is also played tournament style. Most tournaments are 2 to 4 days and play as many as 5 games per day. What happens through asymmetry is we develop energy leaks and compensation. Energy leaks plus compensation plus a high volume makes ultimate a sport with a very high risk of injury. It seems that almost all ultimate players are rehabbing or nursing an injury or have pain. The most common ultimate injuries are ACLs, hamstrings, and Achilles tendon injuries. In order to reach your peak potential as an ultimate player, you must train on both sides of the training spectrum. Sports skills training consists of throwing, catching, offense, defense, ultimate IQ type training. FPT training aims to increase efficiency, correct asymmetries, and build strength, power, and conditioning on top of efficient movement patterns. FPT should be used throughout the full calendar year. Sports skills training is used during a shorter period of the year. Now, we have all seen people that gravitate too much to one side of the spectrum. They become unbalanced. We've seen the people that can lift the house, but they cannot throw a forehand. On the other side of the spectrum, we've seen people that are terrific ultimate players, but they can't jump, or they walk around with their toe out to the side, and they end up tearing an ACL. You cannot reach your full potential as an ultimate player without embracing FPT. Further, you may not get the chance to because you may get injured. An understanding of the 8 pillars of functional performance training is critical to success in ultimate. Let's break these down. Now it's time to break down our moral performance functional performance training system. The system is broken down into 8 pillars or individual modules. Module 1, self-myofascial release. 2, static stretching. 3, mobility. 4, cone-to-cone warm-up. 5, linear speed. 6, agility. 7, strength and power. And 8, conditioning. Let's start by breaking down this half of the pie chart. Self-myofascial release and static stretching work together to improve muscle tissue quality. Self-myofascial release using a foam roller and a lacrosse ball work to decrease the density of the tissue, to rub out the bumps, very similar to what a massage therapist does. Static stretching goes after tissue length. Together, we rub out the bumps and then we increase the length of the tissue. This will help us to get into better positions and decrease the risk of injury. Mobility refers to range of motion about a joint. We aim to get the joint into proper position. For example, our external rotation bias can be corrected by mobilizing the hips into internal rotation. When we mobilize IR, we get back to neutral. In addition to mobility drills, are mobility control drills. As we get more range of motion, we want to make sure that we can control that range of motion. This is known as activation. In Ultimate, one particularly important muscle group to activate is the glutes. By using glute activation drills in the mobility section, we can work to decrease hamstring and ACL injuries. Number 4, cone-to-cone warm-up, is our bridge between preparation and performance. We aim to increase heart rate, muscle temperature, and take the body through the primary motions that we know we're going to see in Ultimate. Together, these 1 through 4 work together to create our optimal full warm-up. We first decrease tissue density. We next increase tissue length. Next, we mobilize our joints, get ourselves into good positions, and activate the proper muscles. Then we're ready for cone-to-cone warm-up. Can each of these be used individually? Absolutely. It's okay to do SMR on your off days or to do static stretching circuits before your weight room movements. But when used together, we can perform at our highest level. Next is modules 5 and 6, speed and agility. Linear speed development aims to optimize forces in a straight line. Anytime that we dump forces to the side, we're wasting energy. These are known as energy leaks. Module 5 aims to correct them to make sure all forces are going exactly the direction we want to go, which is straight ahead. Agility is about change of direction. Module 6 uses my IFP-OFP agility development model, which states that the fundamentals of agility come from the hips. We should be able to use our hips in abduction and adduction. Together, 5 and 6 are about grooving the fundamentals of field movement. Again, modules 1 through 4 come into play with our speed and agility development. For example, the glutes are extremely important in hip extension. They are our biggest, most powerful hip extension muscle. The more that we can use the glutivation drills in Module 3, the better success we will have with our linear speed development drills in Module 5. Next is Module 7, Strength and Power Development. MPFPT breaks this down into 8 categories. Let's start with the first 2, vertical power versus horizontal power. As a strength and conditioning coach, I often get asked, how do I run faster and how do I jump higher? The answer is almost always, build your strength. Remember, strength is the capacity to generate force. Power is force times velocity. It's also important to think about the application of the force. Therefore, we break it down into vertical and horizontal force production. Think about jumping for a disc. You're putting force directly into the ground. Therefore, we use Olympic lifting variations such as the clean in order to enhance this quality. Horizontal force production comes into play with sprinting and laying out. Therefore, we use kettlebell swing progressions in order to train horizontal force production. Next is strength development. This is broken down into lower body and upper body. We break lower body down into hip dominant lifts and knee dominant lifts. We break upper body down into pushing versus pulling. Throughout MPFPT Module 7, there is a unilateral lift bias, meaning we use a lot more single leg or single arm lifts compared to other strength and conditioning methodologies. The reason for this is that ultimate movements mostly occur on a single leg. This is also where injuries occur. The bulk of injuries happen on deceleration on a single leg. It is critical that ultimate athletes learn to control their knee from collapsing on a single leg. It's also critical to be able to use these lifts to balance your asymmetries. By using bilateral lifts only, it's very easy to compensate. We know that ultimate players have a lot of asymmetries. We do not want to compensate. We never want to add strength or conditioning on top of dysfunction. We know that ultimate players have dysfunction. Therefore, our strength development aims to correct that dysfunction through the use of unilateral lifts. The last two sections of Module 7 are core development and ACL reduction. Core development starts with teaching breath, which is critical to many things in athletic performance. For example, when we learn to breathe better, we get better conditioning effect. We get more oxygen flowing into our lungs. In addition, core training allows us to create neutrality, which prevents forces from being dissipated out to the side. ACL reduction is our single leg force absorption movements. These are the prerequisites to true plyometrics. Module 7 goes through 1 through 8 and has some common themes. You will notice a lot of bias to using your glutes. Remember, the glutes are our engine. We want to train them time and again. You will also notice a lot of use of kettlebells. I understand that many ultimate players do not train at gyms. By using kettlebells, we can train anywhere. The last of our 8 MPFPT modules is conditioning. Conditioning for ultimate is very different than conditioning for other sports because it's a sprint, recover style sport. Therefore, our drills should be molded to meet those demands. It's not as simple as going out to the track and running a couple miles. We must use intervals and modify work-to-rest ratios within our 3 topics of conditioning: linear conditioning, change of direction conditioning, and conditioning using kettlebells. It's also critical to note that strength and conditioning should be prioritized during different times of the year. This is a very basic periodization chart. The off-season is the time to prioritize strength and power development. As we go towards our in-season and peak, we work to maintain that strength and power. On the other hand, with conditioning is not prioritized until closer to the peak. The closer to the peak that we get, the closer our work-to-rest ratios represent actual ultimate play. I hope this module has helped you to better understand functional performance training and how the 1 through 8 work together to create a balanced athlete. Simply stated, modules 1 and 2 increase tissue quality. Modules 3 and 4 are about patterning, getting you into better positions and owning those positions. Altogether, 1 through 4 can be thought of as warm-up or movement prep. Modules 5 and 6 are about grooving the fundamental speed, change of direction, and defensive footwork patterns. Modules 7 and 8 are about adding strength and conditioning on top of those patterns. The 1 through 8 work together. This is critical. I'd like to take a second to review how this will help reduce hamstring and ACL injuries. Common themes throughout the MP-FPT system include glute development, striving for symmetry, and unilateral training. These things together help to decrease the risk of common injuries such as ACLs and hamstrings, and also to improve performance. A decreased risk of injury and improved performance results in a safer game and more fun to be had by Ultimate players. I'd like to finish by giving you some practical applications of how you can use the MP-FPT system. I'd like to finish Module 0 by giving you some practical application. Now, I will admit, I know this is a lot, and many of you may be thinking, this is too much for me. How can he expect me to do all of this? Functional performance training is one half of training for Ultimate. Becoming a great Ultimate player takes a career. In the same way that it takes an athlete years and years to be able to throw a 40-yard scuba, it could take you years and years to be able to master FPT. And that's okay. Start from the basics, and as you improve, you can add more. The basics are modules 1 through 4. Start there. Buy a mini band, a foam roller, and a lacrosse ball. Start by using the foam roller series in module 1, the 4-way hip stretching vinyasa in module 2, and the mobility circuit in module 3. When you feel ready, when you've grooved those things out and you feel comfortable, move on to module 4 and so on. I also realize that many of you probably can't make it to a gym to train. Maybe you're too busy or you don't have access to a gym. That's a great opportunity to buy a kettlebell and train anywhere. You can use a kettlebell for strength and power development at your house or even as part of your team's track workouts. Now, as coaches and captains, it's wise to delegate an FPT leader. Give the responsibility to somebody who is very into fitness. Every team has one. Give them the opportunity to lead warm-ups and to develop training programs for the teams. To finish, we built this system to give the Ultimate community a basic knowledge of training. This allows us to train safer, speak a common language, and allow our sport to live up to its potential. Myself and the MP team are dedicated to a life of constant learning and improvement. We want you to join us. Feel free to email me anytime, and I'll see you on the field, or as they say in Europe, I'll see you on the pitch.